Ground beef is $6.70 a pound right now. 3 years ago, it was $3.96. Nobody decided to charge you more. No board meeting, no policy change, no pricing memo. The decision that caused this was made in 2022 by ranchers, in drought, and they made the only decision available to them. Here's what that decision was, and why you won't see the bill stop climbing until 2028. Every time beef prices spike, the same explanations come out. Corporate greed, trade policy, whoever's in power. Here's what's strange about that. Tyson Foods, one of the 4 companies that processes most of America's beef, lost $426 million on beef operations last year. Not a bad quarter. A loss ranchers in Texas watched feed yards close after 70 years. Nobody's getting rich on your $7 ground beef. The real answer doesn't live in any boardroom. It lives in a 10-year biological cycle that nobody controls and almost nobody talks about. Let's follow a cow. The beef you bought this week was born as a calf in 2024. To get from birth to your plate, a beef animal spends roughly 2 years reaching slaughter weight, plus time in a feedlot, plus processing, plus transport. Door to door from calf to grocery shelf, you're looking at 24 to 30 months. That means the beef you buy today reflects decisions made in late 2022 and early 2023. Not last month, not after the last election. 2 years ago, but here's what nobody tells you about that. The cattle industry runs on a 10-year cycle. When prices are high, ranchers expand their herds. When prices are low, they contract. This has been consistent since the 1800s. We've been contracting since 2019. In 2020, drought hit the southern Great Plains, the land where most American cattle live. Pastures dried out. Hay prices climbed. Ranchers who couldn't afford the feed made the only rational decision: sell early, cull the herd. Then in 2022, corn peaked at $7.50 a bushel. The Russia-Ukraine war drove grain prices to historic highs at the exact moment ranchers were already stretched. More culling. By January 2026, the USDA confirmed what the industry already knew: U.S. cattle inventory, 86.155 million head. The lowest since 1951, not since the pandemic, not since the financial crisis, since Truman was in the White House. The beef cow inventory, the actual breeding animals, hit its lowest level since 1961. And the 2025 calf crop, the animals that will eventually become the beef you buy in 2027 and 2028, the smallest since 1941. These aren't quarterly numbers. These are generational lows. Here's the part that trips most people up. High beef prices are exactly the signal ranchers need to rebuild. So why can't they just breed more cattle and fix this? They're trying to. But here's the problem. To rebuild a herd, a rancher has to retain heifers. Those are young female cattle that would normally go to a feedlot and eventually to you as ground beef. When a rancher holds them back to become breeding stock instead, those animals never reach the market. The cure makes the disease worse before it gets better. Every rancher in America making the right long-term decision right now, holding back heifers, is simultaneously shrinking the near-term beef supply. And the biological clock doesn't care about grocery prices. From the moment a rancher decides to expand, it takes 3.5 years minimum for that decision to reach your refrigerator. A cow takes the time it takes. You can't compress gestation. You can't fast forward a feedlot. This is baked in. The clock is running. But let's say you somehow fixed the cattle cycle tonight. You'd still have 2 other problems. May 2025, the US-Mexico border closed to live cattle. Not because of trade policy, because of a parasite. New World screwworm, a fly that lays its eggs in open wounds on livestock, was detected moving north through Mexico. The USDA shut down live cattle imports as a biosecurity measure. That removed between 1.2 and 1.5 million head per year from the supply chain. 18% of feedlot placements in Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, and California. Gone. And then there's demand. Most people assumed $7 ground beef would change how Americans eat. It hasn't. The industry's beef demand index hit 138 in 2025, the highest since 1983. The share of Americans who call themselves vegan or vegetarian fell from 14% in 2020 to 7% in 2025. The plant-based movement didn't just slow down, it reversed. We imported a record 5.5 billion pounds of beef in 2025, up 18% from the year before. 17% of our total supply now coming from abroad. Prices still hit records. The deficit is too large for imports to close. Here's something the industry doesn't advertise. When you have fewer cattle, one way to compensate is to run each animal heavier. Fed cattle hit an average of 1,460 pounds in late 2025. That's 50 pounds above the 5-year average. Ranchers are squeezing more beef out of fewer animals, because that's what they have. Meanwhile, whatever beef does get produced has to pass through a very small number of hands. 4 companies, Tyson, JBS, Cargill, and National Beef, process 82% of the beef in America. That's not new, but it matters more during a shortage. And Tyson, the largest, lost $426 million on beef in fiscal 2025. The price signal at your register wasn't a decision. It was math. So when does this end? The USDA projects the herd won't peak again until 2033, at 91.8 million head, up from today's 86 million. That's a 7-year recovery. Farm Bureau economists put the earliest consumer price relief at 2028, not when prices return to normal, just when they might start to ease. 3 more years of $6, $7, maybe $8 ground beef. That assumes no new drought, no new border disruption, no demand shock. It assumes the rebuilding continues on schedule and the math eventually works in your favor. There's no political fix for a biological clock. No executive order speeds up a calf's gestation period. The cycle runs whether we talk about it or not. What you should watch: heifer retention rates in 2026 and 2027. If ranchers hold back enough breeding stock, the pipeline refills on schedule. If another shock hits, drought, disease, another border closure, 2028 gets pushed. That's the number to track. Ground beef is $6.70 a pound today because of a decision made in 2022 in drought, with $7 corn against a 10-year biological clock nobody controls. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was designed. It's just that the design has a delay built in. And we're living inside it. Next week, we're going inside the facilities where most of America's beef actually gets processed. The plants, the workers, what's happening inside right now. That's the next chapter of this story. Every episode of Supply and Soil answers one question most people are asking, but can't find a straight answer to. If that's what you're looking for, stick around.